Unfortunately, we've seen in the last couple of election cycles, some folks involuntarily returned to private practice.
Right.
And I don't think you'd mind me saying that was your fate. That's what
Definitely.
brought you back, because you served 6 years on the third court and did so, I think, with distinction. Um, and but knowing each other the way we do, I know everything about the story. But Jody and our other listeners,
Yeah, I don't.
And so let's just give us some background on that.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I've talked to people about this, like Craig Enoch and Del Wainwright, who left the bench voluntarily, and how that differs from those of us who didn't leave by choice. Like Craig Enoch, was talking about how it's incredibly excited he was to go back to private practice, and I think when it's not your choice, it's a little less exciting, at least initially. Um, it was interesting after the election happened. A lot of us who lost were on the phone with each other, constantly. We become friends. You become friends through the appellate community, right, beforehand. And then when you're on the bench, you see each other at judicial conferences. So, I was calling people, Brett Busby and Jane Bland and Bill Boyce and, a bunch of people. We were all talking about, okay, who have you interviewed with and what are you thinking about doing? And we'd find firms that had interviewed several of us and things like that. And so, everyone had different perspectives. I had a hard time figuring out what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back to a large firm, if I wanted to start my own practice again, if I wanted to go do mediations and arbitrations. The scary part when you're in that situation is, for at least from my own perspective, I had my own firm. I had a pretty solid book of business. Everything was going well. And on the bench, you give away all your clients, you shut down your firm. And for 6 years, you're on the bench. And I loved it. I would have stayed there for a long time. It had the electorate allowed it. But the hard thing is coming back and realizing that you're basically starting over. Yes, you've been a judge, but from a business perspective, you're starting over. And that's I think the most challenging part. From a practice perspective, it's been great. I love advocating. I think I like the objective deciding cases better, but I love advocating. But you have to convince people that you add value, and then number two, you have to actually look. We all know people don't know who the judges are, and that goes for people in the business community too. They don't know who the judges are. People vote on us, but they have no idea. So from the business community perspective, what I find is you talk to in-house counsel at different companies, they don't even know what happened in the election. They don't realize that statewide we lost 400 judges overnight. What was it, 31 or 32 on the appellate courts? They have no idea. And so they don't know who I am, and they don't know what I can bring to the table for the most part. So it really is an interesting, in the legal world, you assume people, okay, well, they probably, they know the third court of appeals. They might have run into me at some point, but in the business world, they have no idea who you are.
So, Scott, for those of us that don't know you very well, what were you doing before you went on the bench? What was your practice like?
So it was kind of a split practice between litigation and appellate. Like Todd, I admire Todd and others who've been able to do 100% appellate, but I did both. I had done that practice from the get-go at Baker Botts. I was in their trial and appellate departments overlap. I don't know if they still do, but back then they did. And so I did both, and I enjoyed both. I'm one of those rare appellate people who actually, I really love going in front of a jury and arguing. I love interacting with people. This whole isolation thing is driving me crazy. So I had a practice that was probably 60-40 weighted toward trial. And then, of course, went on the appellate bench. And then on the other side, what's interesting, the other side of the firm, and really the way people think of me now, is 100% appellate. And I find myself, even when I'm supporting a trial or something like that, there's a piece of me inside that's like, here, let me take a witness. Which I think is unusual for an appellate lawyer, but I've done a good job of staying in my lane and just doing the appellate side.